Good evening.
Good evening.
I'd like to thank the elders for this opportunity to speak to you today. My topic will be, how should Christians use their tongue? The three big questions we'll be asking today are, how should Christians use their tongue? How do we put away evil speaking? And thirdly, how do we show godly conduct through our speech? Let's first turn to James chapter 3. James chapter 3, starting verses 1 and 2. My brethren, let not many of you become teachers, knowing that we shall receive a stricter judgment. For we shall stumble in many things. If anyone does not stumble in word, he's a perfect man, able to bridle the whole body. So we see here that we all have sinned, and we know that as Christians, we all have stumbled and fallen short of the glory of God. And we see that the tongue is very important in controlling our conduct. And the word here, perfect here, in verse 2, is not flawless, but it means full-grown, mature. So you see James here is trying to get us he's trying to teach us self-control and how we should be. Let's continue reading in verses 3 and 4. Indeed, we put bits in the horses' mouths, that they may obey us, and they turn their whole body. Look also at ships, although they are so large and are driven by fierce winds, they are turned by a very small rudder, wherever the pilot desires. So we see the imagery here by James of something small affecting something that is large. So the bit in the horse's mouth and the rudder on the ship. And he's using that imagery to say that our tongue, even though it's a small part of our body, it has a big effect, and it can affect our whole body. Let's continue reading in verses 5 and 6. Even so the tongue is a little member and boasts great things. See how great a forest a little fire kindles. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. The tongue is set among our members, that it defiles the whole body, and sets on fire the course of nature, and it sets on fire by hell. So here's another spot of imagery of something small, like a small fire, devouring the whole forest. We can see that the tongue is small, and even though it defiles the whole person, like the fire will devour a whole forest. Let's continue reading verses 7 and 8. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and creature of the sea, is tamed, but has been tamed by mankind. But no man can tame the tongue. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. So we see here it's easier for man to tame beasts of the field than it is to tame their own tongue. And it's easier for them to do that because they don't have God. And if you don't have God, you don't have a chance to tame your tongue. You'll mess up sometime, and without God, you cannot do it. Let's continue reading verses 9 through 11. With it we bless our God and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceed blessings and cursings. My brethren, these things ought not to be so. The spring sent forth both fresh water and bitter from the same opening. So we see here the hypocrisy of using our tongue for something that's good and evil. God created our tongue to use for rightly, for edification, for praise, for building up. But if we do both, that's not using the tongue for what God has given us for. If you like reading the Bible, reading through the prophets, I recommend reading Malachi. It's a great book, especially in chapters 1 and 2. Malachi addresses the pseudo-religion that is going on, and the priests offering corrupt sacrifices and offering diseased animals and grumbling at worship and leading people away, doing what they shouldn't be doing. And this verse demonstrates really well what this point is. Can we continue reading verses 11 and 12? The spring sent forth fresh water and bitter from the same opening. Can a fig tree, my brethren, bear olives, or grapevine bear figs? Thus no spring yields both salt and fresh water. These two verses really remind me of a friend back home. He was a Christian when he was about 15, 16. He had a very tough past, so he got caught up into a lot of cursing, and it was a very hard habit for him to control. And he talked to his friends about God, and he got them to come to a worship service. And But they realized his cursing and noticed his inconsistency. They're like, you're a Christian, you shouldn't be doing this. You can't be cursing, it's in the Bible. And they never came back, and that was really sad for me. But this was really good for my friend. It was a wake-up call for him to turn around and get his speech correctly in God's eyes. Now let's look at an example of someone that used their tongue for evil. And if you would, turn with me to Acts chapter 5. Acts chapter 5. I'll be reading verses 1 through 11. But a certain man named Ananias and Sapphira, his wife, sold a possession. He kept back part of the proceeds, his wife also being aware of it, and brought a certain part of it and laid it at the apostles' feet. Peter said, Ananias, why has Satan filled your heart to lie to the Holy Spirit and to keep back part of the price of the land for yourself? While it remained, was it not your own? And after it was sold, was it not in your own control? Why have you conceived this thing in your heart? You have not lied to men but to God. Then Ananias heard these words, fell down and breathed his last. So great fear came upon all those who heard these things. A young man arose and wrapped him up and carried him out and buried him. Now it was about 3 hours later when his wife came in, not knowing what had happened. Peter answered her, tell me whether you sold the land for so much. She said, yes, for so much. Then Peter said to her, how is it that you have agreed together to test the Spirit of the Lord? Look at the feet of those who have buried your husband right at the door. They will carry you out. Immediately she fell down at his feet and breathed her last. And the young man came and found her dead, and carried her out, and buried her by her husband. So great fear came upon the church and all who heard these things. So you see here God, how serious God takes sin of lying. They were killed right on the spot. And this is how, even though this won't happen today, we won't just die for lying. That's how serious lying is. Just a split second can change our outcome for our salvation. Now, let's look at the second question is, how do we put away evil speaking? If you would, turn with me to Colossians 3. Colossians 3, starting in verse 8. Verses 8 through 11. But now you yourselves are put off all these things: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy language out of your mouth. Do not lie to one another, since you have put off the old man with his deeds, and have put on the new man, who is renewed in knowledge according to the image of him who created him. There is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcised nor uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave nor free, but Christ is all in all. So we see it doesn't make sense for us as Christians to go back, since we've already put on the new man, to go back and act like we're of the old man. And it's very hypocritical for us to do that. Let's consider Matthew chapter 12. Matthew chapter 12. Starting in verse 33. Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or else make the tree bad and its fruit bad. For a tree is known by its fruit. Brood of vipers, how can you, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure brings forth evil things. But I say to you, for every idle word men may speak, they will give account for it on the day of judgment. For your words will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. So we see here that we as people, our words affect people more than we think, and we are known by what we say. So it's very important that we say the right things that's in a godly manner. And then also it talks about the seriousness of this, verse 37, and that we be condemned for our words, and how important it is for everything we say to be right, holy, and just. Let's consider James chapter 1, verse 19 and 20. James chapter 1, verse 19 and 20. James chapter 1, verse 19 and 20. So then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, for the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. So here in James, the emphasis is to be slow to action and quick to hear and to think. Because I think most of the times when I've sinned, it's when I've been rash and quick, and I say what comes to my mind right away. And that's when Satan gets you, is when he wants you to not to think about what you're saying and then get you to slip up. So that's very important that we be slow to reaction and quick to thought. Let's look at the third question, and it's how do we show godly conduct through our words? Let's go back to James chapter 3. Starting with verses 13 through 18. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show by good conduct that his works are done in meanness of wisdom. But if you have bitter envy and self-seeking in your hearts, do not boast and try against the truth. This wisdom does not ascend from above, but is earthly, sensual, demonic. For where envy and self-seeking exist, confusion and every evil thing are there. But the wisdom is from above, at first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality, without hypocrisy. Now the fruit of righteousness is sown by these things. So this goes good earlier in chapter 3 with the show by good conduct. And the point of this section is that if we use the wisdom of the world, we will fall. But if we use the wisdom of God, we will be able to sow these important seeds, like being able to boldly have wisdom, be pure, peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits. And if we obey God and His Word, He'll give us these qualities, and we'll be able to control our tongue and be able to resist the devil. So I know this is a very topic that can apply to everyone. We all stumble with our mouths. We all said something we shouldn't have, and we all said something that we regret. And I myself have struggled with this, and I think this lesson is very applicable to all Christians. But I think if we see God and His Word, and we look for that, for all of our problems through His Word, we'll be able to find any problem that we encounter, and we'll be able to do what He wants. At this time, let's turn the service over to Brother Wayne.